This past summer, I had the opportunity to hear the Commoners Choir in concert. The show was part of their Hope and Anger tour. They're a British folk choir that sings all original compositions. Our choir sang one of their pieces earlier, Hope. It was the song's North American debut. Hidden in the bluster, planted in the past, the seeds of our utopia are growing in the cracks. We need a litany, a rosary, a shout, a chant, a melody for our hope. Act upon hope. The lyric offers a title for today's service, Act Upon Hope. It's always difficult to know what to preach about the Sunday following an election. No matter what has happened, there's going to be a variety of feelings in the congregation. Some of you will be disappointed. Some of you are likely to be satisfied. Some of you are probably sick about hearing about electoral politics. And more than a few of you have a mixture of all of these feelings. Act upon hope. Hope is always a good theme for such a service. It relates well to any of the feelings I named a moment ago. If you're disappointed, then you are probably hoping that the next election will turn out differently. If you're excited, then you're probably hopeful about the impact of the election on public policy, or simply relieved that all of the election deniers running for Secretary of State lost their elections. And if you're tired of hearing about electoral politics, then you're probably looking forward to a respite from them, at least once the results from the House finally come in. Hope fits well with our monthly theme also. All month we're reflecting on what grounds us, and the faith of many Unitarian Universalists rests upon hope. This brings me back to our song from the Commoners Choir. While you may not know them, you're almost certainly familiar with their conductor. Boff Whalley was, for many years, one of the primary songwriters for the band Chumbawamba. And even if that name means nothing to you, I can assure you that you know their most popular song, Tub Thumping. The chorus contains very familiar words of hope. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never going to keep me down. Now, I've long been a fan of Chumbawamba. They have one of the greatest ranges of any pop group of the last couple of decades. They've made house music, played punk, sang traditional English protest songs, and arranged choral pieces. None of those, as far as I'm aware, had previously been performed by a congregational choir. And when I asked Boff if he would be willing to let the First Church's choir sing any of them, he was so generous that he actually shared with us the entirety of their scores of choral music. Test out the possibilities, keep an eye out for the gaps. When things are so uncertain, you can find some room to act. One of the things that I appreciate about the composition is that it accomplishes something I aim for in my preaching. It points the way towards the possibility of a better world. It reminds us that whatever the situation we currently face, there is a history of victories to look to, and the seeds for a more just society are already here. I'll return to that claim in a moment. But first I want to observe that I saw the Commoners Choir while they were on their Hope and Anger tour. And Hope and Anger is a pretty good description for a lot of Unitarian Universalist preaching. The tension between the two has even found its way into one of the few recent television depictions of Unitarian Universalist clergy. This Fool is a show about a gang rehabilitation center in Los Angeles. In the pilot episode, one of the characters introduces someone to the center's founder, who happens to be a Unitarian Universalist minister. The minister quickly goes on a rant about the miserliness of a billionaire who made a modest donation. It seems that while the billionaire gave the center a few $1,000s, they had recently spent hundreds of millions of dollars on a vanity space flight. Voicing his frustrations, the clergyman declaims to no one in particular, "Please, throw down a few more pennies from the troposphere. Astronaut, son of a," and storms off. This prompts one character to turn to another and ask, "That fool is a minister?" He's a Unitarian Universalist. Those fools are like hippies, but angry. It's not a terrible description for a lot of Unitarian Universalists. I probably wouldn't be described as a hippie, but the rest of it, still, the phrase catches a core move in a lot of our theology. We begin with a description of what is, then we turn to imagining what should be, and the distance between the two of them can make us angry. And the path that runs from one to the other we might term as hope. Hope, it should be remembered, is not the same thing as optimism. Optimism, the theologian Catherine Keller reminds us, knows the outcome. The optimist has a sense that no matter what happens, things will largely turn out for the best. Their sentiment is based on the opinion that the universe itself is largely benign. A cursory glance at the history of the world and humanity suggests that such a position is unwarranted. There's been too much suffering. We humans have done too many horrible things to each other and to the planet for me to believe that everything is going to turn out for the best. Hope is a hazardous business, Keller claims. It is the possibility of a different future, not its guarantee. It acknowledges what is and then points to what should be and argues that there is a chance, be it ever so slim, that there might be a path from here to there. The opposite of hope is found in words written by George Orwell that he put in his famous novel 1984. There, one of his characters states, "If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever." Just as the optimism that all things will be well is not testified to by the scope of human history, the pessimism of Orwell's statement is equally unwarranted. Hope reminds us that there is always some chance before us to bring more beauty and kindness into the world, that even when we are surrounded by hate, we can choose to act from love. One of the most powerful stories I know about this comes from the Holocaust survivor, Gerta Weizmann-Klein. Writing of her time in Auschwitz, she recollects, "Ilsa, a childhood friend of mine, once found a raspberry in the camp and carried it in her pocket all day to present to me that night on a leaf." Imagine a world in which your entire possession is one raspberry and you give it to your friend. Klein's story is not about the triumph of good over evil. It's not the assurance that suffering will end or that better days are coming. It is a tale of how even in the midst of human horror, people still can sometimes share beauty, and there are few things that are more beautiful than a wild raspberry, and act from love and offer each other friendship. This is what hope is. It is acknowledging what is, awful as it might be. It is naming what should be, lovely as it could be, and it is making a gesture to bridge the gap. Holocaust, the height of human cruelty. Sharing a raspberry, an expression of human solidarity that reflects the best within us. The tension between the two, hope. Hope provides a ground for our Unitarian Universalist faith. In classical Unitarian theology of the 19th century, figures like William Ellery Channing used to speak of the likeness of God. You might have heard some of my reflections on the phrase in the past. In a famous sermon, Channing set forth an essential assertion about the nature of our tradition. He preached, "True religion consists in proposing as our great end a growing likeness to the Supreme Being." This sentiment rests upon a belief that within each of us resides something that theists, or someone prone to religious metaphor such as myself, describe as the spark of the divine. We are each born with potential. The purpose of religious community should be to help us uncover and live into that potential. Yet there will be human cruelty. Yes, there will be human failure. But yes, there's always a chance that each will blossom. Such hope is not necessarily an assurance of permanent victory. Sometimes it's just the interruption of the awful with the beautiful. A smile, a raspberry, a kind word, a reminder that love exists. These little acts of hope are available in many circumstances. Think of your own life. If it's anything like mine, it's had its periods of disappointment, despair, and defeat. I've certainly had my dark nights of the soul, when it feels like the odds were stacked against me and there was little chance that things would get better. And things don't always get better. But even when they do not, there's always been those things, those cracks in the sidewalk that have reminded me to invoke Dr. King. No lie can live forever. Things change. There is human kindness and flowers to be found in unexpected places. I wonder if this has been your experience. Your heart feels like it is breaking. There is so much heaviness. The strange between what is and what should be is profound. And then a stranger smiles, or you look up at a tree's canopied complexity, or you savor a sip of tea, or there's some small thing that happens which calls you beyond the difficulty of the hour and reminds you that the future is unwritten and that there is still some good to be found. This sentiment is rich within Severin Hajipur's song Barahe. It's the anthem of the protest movement currently in Iran, and he composed it of the tweets from those in the streets and those who support them. It reflects the reasons why, after more than 40 years in a theocratic regime, many Iranian people continue to strive for a better country. The song contains many statements about the awfulness that people experience living under the regime. There's economic-based despair, tears that spill so endlessly, and households collapsed because of faulty parts. But there's also footloose dancing in the streets and the warmth of sunrise when the new day starts. Overall, what I found in Baraye is a testament how it is possible, even in the brutality of the hour, to both find hope and to act upon it. It's not a simple matter to act upon hope. Awful regimes thrive by making us imagine that the future is fixed and that there is nothing we can do to change its course. Orwell's adage ends with forever. Forever is perhaps the most unrealistic word in the English language. Not even stars last forever. It's a mistake to cast hope as a belief that the victories that we've had can be assured to be permanent. The greatest failure of the political imagination is the thought that the way society is arranged now is either how it has been in the past or how it will be in the future. The same is true with our personal lives. They're constantly changing and shifting. And in both, hope should be found in the assurance that we are moving always in the river of time. Any moment might contain delight or difficulty, but our lives and our world will be different in some other moment. An embrace of the lack of permanent victory, a hope based in the reality that the universe itself is ever-changing, ever-shifting, ever-altering, is core to Unitarian Universalism. Returning to Channing's famous sermon, in it he does not promise everlasting salvation. Instead, he holds out the chance that there will be times in our lives when a ray of infinite light may yet break forth and shine as the sun. We might grow this hour in the likeness of God, and in the next discover that we have done some ill. Yet there always remains some odds, be they great or small, that we might be touched by kindness and generosity. Channing's words are almost 200 years old. They may even seem antiquated. Human hope is a deeply personal matter. Each generation expresses it in its own words. Catherine Keller wrote her reflections on hope in a work trying to make theological sense of the climate crisis. The reality that we humans might destroy the capacity for our planet to sustain us is not and the hope that our species might avert that fate is not something that earlier generations had to cast into the language of hope. The hopes listed in Baye contain several items that are similarly bound up in the time and place of 21st century Iran. A Unitarian Universalist approach to theology, as I said earlier, is to name what is, imagine what should be, and attempt to travel the path, to act upon hope between the two. What was yesterday differs from what is today. What will be tomorrow is not going to be the same as what exists now. My imaginings and yours are in some ways other than those of our ancestors, and likewise might seem strange to future generations. Even if much is the same, continuing desires for clean air and water, shelter, good food, companionship, and some work to call honest, there will also be much that seems different. The least difference might be language. My family's not always spoken English. Generations ago, my ancestors named their imaginings in German, Yiddish, Ladino, and other tongues. I imagine the same is true for your family. I mention language because we are at a moment in congregational life where we are trying to put our hopes into the words of generations now living. As you might know, we are currently in the process of drafting a new mission, vision, and covenant for the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Houston. This is a process designed to help us better live out our theology. We are figuring out what we aspire to, our mission. We are envisioning how we might bring it about, our vision. And we are telling each other how we promise to treat each other as we work together, our covenant. Today, you have an important opportunity to help us articulate our collective hopes and imaginings and how we might act upon them. Our Vision, Mission, and Covenant Committee has been gathering your input through a series of focus groups and in an online form. Their intention is to make sure that everyone who wants to have a voice in naming the hopes of this community has the opportunity to do so. In your order of service, you'll find a QR code that will take you to the committee's online form. And after this service, they're offering an opportunity to participate in a focus group if you've not had a chance to do so already. So far, we've had more than 130 people share their thoughts with the committee. We have a goal of hearing from at least 150 of you, roughly half the membership of the congregation, before the committee begins its work of crafting a new vision, mission, and covenant in the next couple of weeks. And so if you've not yet participated, please do and help us reach that level of engagement. Our hopes are much easier to act upon when we share them with each other. I would also be remiss not to mention another opportunity to share your hopes for this community and act upon them. Earlier today, before this service, the building task force presented the work that they have identified needs to be done as part of a prospective capital campaign. A capital campaign is a time when we name our hopes and then commit to bring them into being. There's a lot being considered. Everything from attending to deferred maintenance and greening and beautifying our campuses. If you haven't had a chance to participate in that meeting, there will be one on Tuesday online. Final decisions about the campaign itself will not be made until December. The draft text of the mission, vision, and covenant of the congregation will be shared next month too. So now is a time for you to let your hopes for the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Houston be known. I close with these references to the work of our congregation because they are, once again, illustrative of our Unitarian Universalist theology of hope. They begin with what is, the desire for a mission, vision, and covenant, and the need to address critical issues in the building. But they also offer us the opportunity for what should be, a mission, vision, and covenant cast in the language and embodying the aspirations of generations now living, and a physical plan that meets our needs and reflects our values. And I suggest a path between the two, a way to act upon hope, the what is and the what should be. We need a litany, a rosary, a shout, a chant, a melody for our hope. Act upon hope. May this community be a place for each of us, for all of us, be the times easy or hard, to act upon hope. That it might be so, I invite the congregation to say, Amen.